Well, hello again, sports fans. Sadly, this is yet another video of me crashing my Nano Talon. This picture was taken about a week ago after the 1 amp BEC failed and she ploughed on the ground at speed. She went back together fairly well, I think largely because I'd laminated the fuselage, and everything except the flight camera seemed to be working fine. So I had to wait a couple of days for the weather to be good enough to try again. So it's a beautiful sunny day, very little wind. I'm flying line of sight because I haven't been able to get the camera up and running. And initially everything seems to be going pretty well. I didn't have to do a lot of trimming, just a little bit of elevator. And it seems to be pretty well under control. I'm flying in pass-through mode and decide to switch the big AL into stabiliser mode, or balance mode as they call it. Nothing dramatic happens, but she does start losing altitude at a fairly steady rate, and I try increasing the throttle a little and it doesn't seem to stop it. So I start adding some elevator, but it doesn't really seem to be having much effect at this stage. Even full elevator doesn't seem to slow the rate of descent much, and I only just managed to keep from going into the dam. So I switched back into manual mode and just managed to keep from hitting the deck, but in the process I managed to fly behind the plane-eating tree at the end of our strip. I thought I was clear, but that turned out not to be the case. The damage surprisingly wasn't too bad, and I was able to get it back together overnight and have another go the next day. Once again she launched okay, and initially I thought it wasn't too bad. She seemed to be having a tendency to drop a wing, but wasn't diving for the ground at all, so I was pretty pleased about that. The camera's still not working, so once again I'm flying this line of sight. And I noticed that she seemed to be crabbing a bit in the turns, which I attributed to probably the rudder. So I spent the next few minutes trying to trim it out, and ended up using pretty much all of the rudder trim, as well as a bit of aileron trim to get her flying pretty close to level and straight. I did, however, notice that I was having trouble flying a straight course down the strip. Even adding in rudder didn't seem to be helping. I kept going off to the left, as you can see here. It's the same thing on this pass. I'm trying to fly down the middle of the strip and not doing a very good job of it. So I realised that having used up all the rudder trim, I'm going to have to make some mechanical adjustments after the flight. So I take her up a bit higher to explore the range of rudder control I've got and try and work out how much gain I'm going to need to set in the autopilot. So I don't seem to have any trouble gaining altitude. I'm using probably middle throttle and mainly elevator and ailerons for control. So everything seems to be okay until I actually start experimenting with the rudder, and she goes nailed down into a spin pretty well straight away, and there's nothing I can really do to stop it. So she goes in fairly hard, a couple of 100 metres away, and needless to say I'm a little bit depressed about it. When I get there I find that the damage wasn't as bad as it could have been, though it's still enough to require a fair bit of glue. So realising that the rudder seems to be the cause of the problem, I put it under the microscope when I got home, and quickly realised that the rudder is operating in reverse and in opposition to the ailerons, which probably would have accounted for the nosedive. I can only assume I stuffed it up when I did the last repair and just hadn't noticed because of my lack of familiarity with VTOL models. Anyway, I think I've got it right now, so I just need another calm day to go out and have yet another trimming exercise.